Okay, well, welcome everybody to the Admissions Redesign Network meeting. I know it has been a very long time since we have gotten this larger group back together, but we have been active with the guiding team. We had a convening in November and then followed that up with a recent meeting in January to kind of really focus in on the big strategy areas and what we thought some feasible solutions might be for this group to work on together. And that convening in November was facilitated by a few of our partners, the Education Strategy Group, as well as Trendy Minds. And they really helped facilitate some great conversations on our solution areas. They took notes, fed them back to us, and we then kind of reviewed those notes as a group of the guiding team and got some feedback on strategies. And now we're bringing it to this larger group to again present kind of our current state of where we are, receive feedback, and continue hopefully moving forward. So I'm going to go ahead and share screen. I do want you to know today is going to be very interactive. And I know we are a large group. And so the presentation today is through Menti.com. So there's going to be a lot of kind of polling just to make sure that I feel like I have a good sense of the pulse and the energy of the group and the directions that we want to go. And we can always continue to refine and wordsmith in strategy kind of smaller groups as we do move forward. But this is going to be kind of all of the ideas today, and I'm glad we have such a diverse group of folks with us. So we're going to review and hopefully get to consensus around the strategy solutions, which also could mean consensus on not doing a strategy. And so, we're going to be voting on all three of, or on all of the 10 different ideas that have been put forward to date. And then we'll kind of discuss next steps in implementation planning. As you know, this is a part of a Lumina funded project. And so, we do have kind of a deliverable that I'll have to give to them at some point, well, by April 25th. So we're kind of marching toward that. In keeping with the vision of the admissions redesign project, some things that we are trying to keep front of mind is that complexity is the friend of the privileged. And the more complex and complicated our systems are, it just takes that much more time and support and resources to really navigate them. And so we are disadvantaging some of our students that may not have as much of those resources at their disposal. So that's kind of our vision as we're moving forward and thinking about our admissions experience from the student's perspective. The principles of the Lumina admissions redesign are trying to create a simplified, proactive, automated, and transparent admissions process for students and families, and that is our goal. As we began talking about this project and really approaching it from a design thinking approach, we identified as a group these as kind of the big sticking points, the solution areas that we wanted to really think through. What can we do to help remove barriers and improve access for students? And those topic areas were transcripts, both the dual credit transcript as well as the final high school transcript, dual credit itself as an experience and a high impact experience for students that increases college going likelihood as well as success. Financial aid and understanding financial aid and understanding costs of college and how to pay for it. Thinking about overall communications and the importance of talking to students about key experiences and milestones that they may hit as a 9th grader, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, and so on. And then also, and kind of like added into the process after we went to LA for a convening with the Lumina Foundation in September, was wanting to also work on our seamless transfer partnerships and pathways with our KCTCS partners. So excited to have so many folks with us here today to go into this. So as you can see, we've got at the top of every screen is going to have the menti.com and then our specific code. And that code is how we're going to vote. So Let me just make sure I have the chat accessible in case there's notes that pop in. Okay, I should be able to see the chat and people's hands if they raise them. Okay, so we have 10 total solution ideas. And for each one, we'll kind of read, we'll have some time to discuss if there's any questions that people have, if there are concerns related to words or language. And then the next slide, I'll just kind of preview it and then I'll go back to this one. The next slide is a vote where we'll take a vote and we'll kind of hopefully get everybody's perspective on, I support this strategy as is. I support this strategy with updates or changes needed, or I do not think this is a priority right now. And I will say we have 10 strategy ideas here, 5 topics and 10 total solutions. And so that is a lot of work for us to take on. And so, please do feel free to think about this from an overall, how much do we want to bite off, or how much can we, put on our plates at this time? And what do we think are the maybe highest priorities in our work? Okay, so with transcript, one of our first solutions that came out was this concept of creating a dual credit transcript consortium to invite all the post-secondary institutions in Kentucky to be a part of it. It would require participation in the National Student Clearinghouse. Campus partners would need to provide free dual credit transcripts to students, and we would need a data sharing kind of consent process in the dual credit application so that students were consenting to have their transcripts shared upon completion of the course. That the kind of implementation piece of this would be to stand up CPE as a National Student Clearinghouse transcripting institution, and then give access to all of the participating colleges and universities to be able to pull down all of those dual credit transcripts for your applicants. And I think that as we recall, like our various conversations around students having dual credit from multiple institutions, this process being both pretty complex as well as costly. So would love to just invite some conversation. If anybody has a better way of explaining this, that did seem like a pretty complicated explanation. I just went over what this even is, but welcome kind of conversation right now around this particular solution. Thanks, Michelle. Are there any concerns related to or questions that might be a little bit more detailed related to the functioning of this process, or anything to raise or throw into the group?
The only thing I would say is that I don't know that we're going to have more specifics about the functioning until we get into, so I do think it's something that we should prioritize because we need to explore it and understand how it's going to work and if there are other issues that will come through it. I think we'll be able to navigate it and it'll be a good win for the students and for all of us from getting dual credit transcripts and making sure that the students are getting credit in time to make those course decisions when they're scheduling. So.
Thanks, Christine.
I do have a question as someone who works in dual credit. In theory, are we talking that these transcripts are provided at the end of their dual credit career or at the end of each semester while they're in dual credit?
I imagine that as a part of the application process, these transcripts are a part of they're pulled at the admissions process, when they need to know how many, they're trying to review transcripts for placement into, scheduling for the fall semester and those kinds of things. So it wouldn't have to be at the end of my sophomore year. I can send my transcript somewhere. This is about you as a post-secondary institution knowing which students have applied and intend to come to your school that following fall, and then you having easy access to all of their dual credit transcripts from various institutions.
I'll be back, sweetie. Good girl, okay?
John, did you have a question or comment?
No, sorry, I'm got to mute.
No problem.
Kelly, conceptually, I think it would be at the end of like in the senior year just once because we're agreeing to release them at no cost. So we would know who our dual credit participants are and we would release them at that time so that they could be pulled down where sent to basically CPE so that anybody wherever that student is going can pull it down from there. So that's the idea. I don't think that we all agreed that we would not charge for dual credit scholarship or transcripts after each semester. So part of it is when are we releasing it? And I think it's for our seniors that we know will be applying to, whether they're applying to or not, but after they've completed in their fourth year.
Gotcha. Thank you. As the dual credit person, I would love to see it every semester, but I understand the purpose it's to serve. So thank you.
Thanks for clarifying that, Christine. Okay, well, I'll just kind of move ahead and see if y'all don't mind sharing your feedback or, just where are you related to the language of this particular solution? This can help us know if we want to have more discussion. And if anyone's having any issues with the Mentimeter voting, please let me know. Anybody who is supporting the strategy with updates, are there any specifics that you think it would be worth discussing now? Or we will discuss any necessary clarifications inside of an implementation planning group if this strategy has enough energy to move forward, which it looks like there's a lot of energy around this strategy. We just may need to tweak it a little bit. So curious if anybody wants to share any of their recommendations related to updates.
Lily, I don't.
It's already been alluded. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Harmony.
Oh, and we might be saying the same thing. I was just saying, as the discussion prior just showed, I think we need to be a little bit more explicit of who and when and the one-time thing.
Yeah, that was basically what I was saying. Just a very transparent timeline of when available and how and what happens after that date. We do have students, and of course now it's on them to do it. So this would certainly make the process easier. But I think also keeping in mind some, not a ton, some of those students will continue to take some summer courses in between graduating in their freshman year. And so that might be another piece of consideration and how that would be handled, depending on the timeline of those transcripts being available. The other thing maybe to note, I don't know about other schools, but we do have some incoming freshman orientations that happen in April prior to the end of the school year. Often we will ask those students to submit their transcript up to that point, so that at least advising can be based on what they do have completed already. So that might be another little timing issue to consider.
Thank you. Okay. Well, let's keep moving forward. I know there are 10 of these to talk about today. The second piece about transcripts was related to final high school transcripts. And I did get some feedback from the guiding team related to the original, I guess, version of these and discussion in the meeting. And so good questions asked about some previous language on it. So hopefully this is a little updated, but welcome feedback and discussion as well. Establish a parchment best practices for sending final high school transcripts that detail a minimally sufficient set of practices and provides professional development to school staff related to Infinite Campus. And this is hopefully to improve our accuracy, efficiency, completeness of the final high school transcripts getting to our post-secondary institutions in a timely manner. We can't take this one off the student's checklist like we are attempting to do with the dual credit transcripts, but hopefully at least removing some of the procedural barriers or challenges that it seems like we may face across various high schools. Any discussion, thoughts in the open in this moment?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I participated in the webinar last week that the advising group did with Mitzi, and it was very, very good. And so a lot of good information. Parchment was there. I learned something, and we even addressed that question I think that Jenny Sawyer had brought up several times about sometimes we receive the final transcript with no graduation date. Well, that's tied to something they've got to do in Infinite Campus. So I thought it was very good, and I think this would be a really good one to do.
Thanks, Scott. Michelle, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I was just going to say, for non-K-12 folks, this is really just the procedural practices that go behind the scenes for the K-12 side, so that we make sure that the graduation date is listed on there, that there is a process for students when they make a request for their official transcript during the summer when school counselors and other school staff's not in session. And there has been a great deal of training that has been going on around this particular topic since we last met, including Parchment looking at data to find which schools have not been doing the summer releases. So just wanted to give some backstory for those that maybe not understand the Infinite Campus side of it.
Thank you, Michelle. Okay, so I welcome feedback on the language of this particular solution. Looks like there's pretty good energy on this one. Feel free to keep voting. We will continue moving forward. Okay, so our second solution area was in dual credit, and just knowing all of the positive data of the impact of having dual credit experiences on a student's likelihood to apply to college, likelihood to matriculate to college, their first year GPA, the number of credits they take their first year, as well as just overall success and completion. We talked a lot about how do we increase access to dual credit across the Commonwealth. And one of the first solutions, or kind of, I guess, gaps in our knowledge, was around who has access to dual credit in order to identify the right interventions or updates in programs, policies, practices, et cetera. So this idea was to conduct an early post-secondary opportunities audit that is not just dual credit, but it's all early post-secondary opportunities of all high schools in the state, including course offerings, teacher certification, and student participation rates with demographic breakouts to inform policy, practice, and programs to increase access to dual credit opportunities. So this would be a very tangible project that we would complete, and I think that the findings from it would really help us target what we want to do next and really have a better understanding so that we made really intentional decisions about how do we increase access to dual credit? Where do we increase? For whom do we increase? And what are some of the biggest barriers to access in particular schools? So any thoughts or discussion on this while we go ahead and open up our
What would be your process for doing that audit?
Well, I would love to work with an outside organization to lead and facilitate that. And that is definitely something that would need to be discussed and thought through in the implementation planning work group that would think through this particular
Okay,
solution.
that's helpful, and thanks for asking that, Julie, because Lily, I was thinking it was a mostly quantitative, but you're looking at a quantitative and qualitative approach. And if you're
Mhm.
doing that, I don't want to jump ahead, but I would include what is this? What question are we on? Whatever 2 from now is on dual credit, the one about financial hardship. Because I think that's something that there's an assumption, there's some information, but we do not have an understanding. And so that's one of the things I think I put in my survey is I would add that if we were doing something beyond a quantitative analysis of the data and adding some qualitative, that would be helpful narrative to get through that process.
Yeah, absolutely. Would anybody like to share some of the thoughts related to updates that would be helpful with this, with the language around this?
Similar to the other comments before, it's just adding more clarity because it wasn't clear to me that there was qualitative work that was going to be done. And that to me, I thought it was just going to be an assessment based on the data we already have of who's offering and who's a dual, credit certified teacher and the demographics of the students who are taking it, which are probably all through KY stats.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? In an earlier version of the dual credit, we did have 3 bullet points. The second one was just increasing access to dual credit. And so I think that one is just, I kind of removed that, but bundled it in the language of this one, like the audit is in order to increase access to dual credit. And so we're going to go straight to the third, originally the third, now the second, dual credit commitment, which is around research the costs of dual credit participation beyond tuition that are not covered by the dual credit scholarship in order to inform policy around the dual credit scholarship. And I think ideally this would be a bundled project, the audit and as well as understanding the financial experience of students participating. Any thoughts, questions, suggestions?
Yes, one question I have on this, and this might be semantics, is there, when I read that, and some of this I'm reading for the first time because I'm a second or third concentric circle in some of this. I tripped over the wording a little bit. I mean, I think the intent is right. I just might work on making the wording, if this is a public document, making that more concise.
Okay.
Something like research the additional costs associated with dual credit participation that are not covered by scholarship. This information can help guide policy decisions around dual credit scholarship or something, just sort of, because I stumbled over it the first time I read it.
Thank you, Julie.
And I would add to that and assess if it is a barrier, right? Like we right. I mean, I think that to Julie's point for that, for some students, it's going to be what percentage of students, what are the costs we're talking about. So I think adding that barrier language in there would be helpful.
Will do. Okay. Any other thoughts? Robin, any thoughts from you with the dual credit hat on?
Lily, the only thing that I will add is that I just think that the audit for the first question and for this one will help inform dual credit work, beyond this group. There's just a lot already going on and lots of questions about, well, who's offering dual credit, and that's really hard to find out, so I think answering these questions is a great first step, and I really like the way we've gone, this direction we've gone based on the last meeting that we had, which was more action oriented, but I think finding out what we don't know is really important before we start to act. So I'm very supportive of these two.
Perfect. Thanks, Robin. Okay, moving on. Looking at financial aid. This was a part of our convening that we may have had some, I guess, like not quite consensus on what was the final outcome of the group. What was the final thought on the group of how to move forward? And so the original was around kind of creating a part of a financial aid notification that was standardized across our campuses. And then feedback from the guiding team was like, we've talked about the CASPA standards and the college financing plan document that already exists. And so I want to, I tried to rework it to reflect that, but I also am totally open to feedback from this group, but ultimately recognizing that we'll be working with the financial aid directors and others related to what do we want to do moving forward to hopefully increase transparency for students as they're comparing the cost of college across our campuses. So the language currently is to work with financial aid directors and CASPA to adopt the Department of Education's college financing plan, to notify students of their financial aid packages in a standardized form, enabling prospective students to compare costs across different schools.
Yeah, hey, this is Paul. So I think one of the things we did talk about was having all of us kind of use the NASFA standards of excellence in our financial aid award letters, because we are all obviously marketing different students and different student types.
Is that an additional, is that separate from?
That's in place of what you have here, I believe.
And the NAFSA standards of excellence, does that have kind of any kind of structured like template that allows students to see apples to apples, or is it just?
No, it's it doesn't have a template, but it does have standards that the information that you're providing is consistent across different colleges, so that we're very clear on what a loan is and a grant and a scholarship, for example, cost of attendance, direct cost, indirect cost. And what you actually do is you commit to doing that.
Okay.
So that was my takeaway from the meeting. Because we did talk about a lot of different things, so.
Yeah. Do folks feel like this is not a, I guess I'm just wondering, like, what's the difference for the student? When they get their financial aid notification, their financial aid award, are they going to still are they going to be able to better compare the cost of college if we're all just, applying the best practices and standards versus having something that looks very similar across our institution so that it's really easy to understand?
Yeah, and I had brought up at the meeting, we had the shopping sheet the Department of Ed tried years ago, and that it was a flop. It didn't work at all. I mean, I don't get that many questions when a parent or a student are comparing award letters on the information. The questions that we get is, tell me the difference between ABC scholarship you offer and XYZ that they offer. They're looking, at those specific awards and the cost as well.
Okay.
I think to bring it back, the way that this is written makes it sound like it's like with a standardized form. Again, you're getting into the fact that all of us have different vendors that we are working with, that we have to comply with, I mean, and pay a lot of money for, to be able to support this work, in a timely fashion. And so I think getting into a standardized form creates a substantial challenge. I can only, I mean, Paul, I can speak for us, but, and it'd be nice to hear from others, but that's the way that this is written makes it sound like we're adopting a standardized form that would need to be implemented at each institution. And I don't know that that's something that we can do with the information that we have, the way we have it laid out with the vendor and frankly, what we know that we need to share with the students.
Yeah, and I think we saw that when we all had copies of award letters from all the different colleges that we shared during that meeting. I mean, they're vastly different.
If this one was reframed to say, work with the financial aid directors to to come up with a solution that enables prospective students to compare costs across different schools, would that be like without a specific, like this is the way we're going to do it, but just working still toward that same goal of the students, like looking at the way that the award letters are very different. Do we have a goal that we want to provide some kind of consistency so that it's a little bit more clear to students, A versus B? Bryson?
Yeah, so I'm a little confused because I don't remember us mentioning CASFA during the meeting that we were all together. That would be NASFA, I believe, is what you're trying to refer to there.
Well, it came out of actually some feedback on one of the surveys that was submitted. And that person I thought was recalling a conversation from the convening and was providing an updated, like suggested updated language. So
Yeah,
they mentioned our Kentucky Professional Association for Financial Aid Directors. And so is that CAFSA?
It rolls up
that is,
to NAFSA.
But you say NAFSA is the best one.
Yeah.
Okay.
and I mean, the way that we left the meeting was, I think we were all pretty well in agreement that we would, by adhering to NASFA standards, would have a similar product that is workable within the means that we have as far as the different technology that each institution uses, the different platforms and so forth. So it would be as simple as rephrasing that to state that we would work with financial aid directors to adopt basically to adopt the NASFA standards
Okay.
for such communications, period, and no reason for anything else. We all already do that. So, or the majority of us do, I think, at least.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
That's manageable and that's doable. What we have there just isn't, I don't believe.
Okay.
I would
Okay.
say too that we put the college financing plan out there for our students. They don't use it. They don't look at it. They use the other award letter that we provide.
Thank you, Rhonda.
I guess I want to make sure that that we're aware of a tool that already exists as well. NASFA has a college offer comparison tool. That's something that already exists. So I think maybe this could be restructured to be more like a Commonwealth of Kentucky comparison tool, but the infrastructure already exists. NASFA has an aid offer comparison worksheet. So I want to make sure we all know that.
Working on your transfer.
Hey, Heidi. Okay, so right now this one is looking like we do not want to move forward with financial aid as a component of our admissions redesign strategy solutions. Is that what we're thinking? Are we thinking that because we feel like we're already hitting it out of the park, we're already doing what the goal is to do, or is it because we didn't come up with a really good statement or solution that we want to support as like that can be worked?
No, I think we came up with a good solution. I think most of us are already doing it. Like here at UK, we even went back and double checked our award letter against the NASFA standards.
Does everybody feel like their award letter meets the NAFSA standards?
I mean, really what I would suggest is that it's likely the language, and that if the language that was all agreed upon at the time and that everybody's suggesting now is in there, then the idea would be that all institutions go and look at the standards of excellence and make sure that they comply with that, which should get us to that place that we're looking for. So now that there's no work that needs to be done, because I think, Paul, you guys all looked at each other's and there may be some opportunities, but that would be the statement.
Okay. And if anybody would not mind drafting up kind of what we've all just said and putting something in the chat, I'll just make sure it's documented really clearly. That would be helpful. Okay. So thinking about communications. Here we go, Julie. So we have a forthcoming Futurity website, which is kind of a one-stop college-going milestones, checklist, resources, supports, etc. website. And this is a communications opportunity to engage campus partners in that review and continuous improvement of this one-stop website, to ensure that it's aligned with the college-going messages and resources for students and families, and is integrated into our communications campaigns as we're moving forward. And Amanda, if you wanted to add anything to this, you're welcome to.
Yeah, and if you're not familiar with it, it's because we are launching it on Tuesday, but it is live, and we have interviewed or had focus groups with some of your folks. I would have to look to see who. We had about 1,200. We engaged with focus groups from middle, high school, adult learners, military, higher ed, and K-12 parents, the chamber, business and industry. It's futurity.org. I'll put it in the chat. And we are making final edits before, oh wait, it did not spell it correctly because it auto-corrected me. There we go. And so that's what this is referring to. But if you're not familiar, it's just because we are getting ready to launch it. So but you're welcome to look. And that's one of the things we had talked about, being able to review and share maybe at a future meeting. But if this is even a priority for you to do that and engage. And just so you know, if you wonder where we got our data and our information, it all came from KY Stats, or we linked it to your direct sites. So we are not duplicating work, but we are just trying to cut down on the number of clicks that potential students have to do to navigate how they can continue their education, find financial aid information, seek out information about your institution, and the majors and how it aligns with careers and what's available in Kentucky. So that's what that is.
Thank you.
Amanda, quick question. Is there currently a point of contact for each campus on this?
We did not put a point of contact at this point, but if that is the suggestion, because we didn't want to have to update those names constantly throughout the year, but that's not off the table, Scott. So if that is something you all like, this is a good idea on this one with the communications piece. If you all felt like that would be more beneficial with an individual, we're happy to do that. We are going to have someone oversee this site and update it continuously. But that's where we would love engagement to enhance your all's opportunities even more, because it's only Kentucky based. So it is really about resources in Kentucky, education in Kentucky, and jobs in Kentucky. So that was the purpose behind it, and really to take the students' right to know that's very unfriendly right now and overwhelming, and put it into a really user-friendly approach to be able to see that information in a way that was intended. And so there's where we've done a lot of cross-sector support, but that's the kind of stuff, Scott, we would love to have feedback on and need.
Amanda, Christine shared the link with me a little while ago. I spent a little bit of time on the site. I do have some feedback. I did notice that, for instance, I think there's some performance issues. Maybe it's a dev site, so therefore it's not performing. But when I did a couple of different queries, it timed out and didn't give an answer.
Yes, they are doing uploads all day. Today, this entire week, they're uploading all changes that we've submitted to them. So it is running a little slow. And make sure also, Julie, that it is the futurity.org and not the Blitz, because when you search it online, it does bring the test site up. Because we are updating the Google search piece. And so that should be really outdated now because we've transferred it over to futurity.org.
I was in the org.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So we had some timeout issues yesterday, but I will definitely follow up with that. And we were using Edge, Google, anything that Safari, anything. And we were having some of that yesterday, but we were pushing on our developers to push out updates too, and doing some last minute things, but I will definitely report that and appreciate your feedback.
I'm also, you mentioned this, but there were places where the data was referenced, but I think if you can put in there where the sourcing is for the data, that's useful. I also think that we need some explanation of why some of that data matters.
Okay.
I think that if you're talking to a ninth grader going through some of this, it would be probably not obvious in some cases. I go back to, one of the things I've learned from one of the things that you all said really stuck with me, which is, basically resources bring privilege. And for those students who may not have a lot of support system, being able to define some of that, I think, is critically important.
Sure.
I also think when it was displaying the different degrees and it was doing it by the name of the degree, I think it needs some additional refinement because sports kinesiology, physical education is a good example. It didn't seem to bring up our bachelor's degree. It only brought up our doctorate. And if a student is looking at this and they're looking at different things, it may not be obvious to them. So if you could filter by degree level plus by degree, things like that, I think.
Yes, you can actually do that in the future finder. You can actually do that, but I appreciate though, I'm writing that down because this is definitely for an audience. We have everything. Now the data is not written in 7th grade written language, but our information is, and we have it fully accessible, that we have run it through extremely rigorous pieces of that. So, but it is, you can break it out by the level of education for sure. And there are some descriptions, but you're not all of them. And this is really for even for adults returning, but to your point, they need to understand what that is. And so we can definitely dig into that further, but this is exactly what this would be. It's that continuous improvement, that input of how we can improve that, elevate what you're doing, and make sure it's in a way that's going to be helpful and connected, and not a standalone. The whole reason for it is because a lot of things have landing pages, but there wasn't one landing page. There are lots and lots of landing pages in Kentucky, with amazing resources that we are not communicated well collectively. Individuals have, but collectively.
And I agree with Scott. I think there needs to be a point person at each college. For instance, our logo is not the correct one, just being able to make sure that we give you the right kind of information. But, and this is probably a separate conversation. I have a lot of thoughts.
Sure. I'd love to follow up with you if that's okay. And
if
this gets voted in, Julie, you're in.
Well, this is what I
and
do.
Anybody else?
So, but I do feel like it's very dense. and I'm not familiar with what we're coming from, but going to. So I would just want to spend a little time talking about sort of the journey process.
Sure.
You know, what a ninth grader is expected to do versus an 11th grader. And then the
Sure.
last part, and the part that I really did like is how you can find out what jobs are available. But I want to see if we can fine tune it, because I found a few dead ends there. Like if somebody was interested in a job, how you actually connect them to the ability to get that job.
Okay.
So
I'm just
I won't
taking
belabor
notes.
it, but yeah.
No, I appreciate it. And if this goes through, definitely, but even if not, I would love to follow up with you guys and get this very detailed feedback. That's only going to help us make it better. So thank you. I really appreciate the time you took to look and provide feedback. So, yep. Thank you.
Please feel free to vote. So the strategy was around engaging campus partners in providing feedback and continuous improvement of the Futurity website with the opportunity to incorporate into or integrate into our messaging campaigns. So with the updates that would be suggested, if this, and it looks like it will move forward into a working group strategy area. Anybody want to share what some of those updates to the strategy solution would be? I know we have a lot of updates suggested for the site itself, which is the continuous improvement process. So if there's anything specific around the language of the actual solution, would welcome those comments too.
I guess I also have a lot of thoughts around how this is integrated. I mean, I realize it's going to launch Tuesday, but is it a soft launch or is it a, confetti launch?
Well, it's a legit launch. I mean, but it's already live. It's just awareness. And this was our phase 1 to incorporate the data into this and to capture the multiple uses of the audiences and feedback we're getting. But we have more to do. So this was just the beginning. It's never the end. And if you ever say you arrive on a website, you are sorely mistaken. So we are working on version 2 already, or phase 2 for improvement, but that's where we have to get it launched to get feedback and get some usage because we've had so many focus groups early on with early use, which is really drove the changes and a lot of the mapping and the naming of things and the approach based on user experience, time, all the things. And so, it will never be perfect. But at the same time, we're trying to really bring to light something that is user friendly and not education ease or state government ease, but something where people feel worthy to at least get started. But Julie, to your point, we definitely, if we didn't want feedback and to improve it, we wouldn't even have this on the piece, and we do. And part of the strengthening between, even if you're just looking at the audience of high school students into college, there's a lot of misfire on a lot of things that I think if we could help message correctly earlier, or something maybe that we're missing or an audience we haven't tapped into, let's do it. And so that's why we really need your all's input as recruitment into campuses and things, but also folks who may be non-traditional. And so, like I said, it's not just for high school students, it's for potential students, period, with an effort that it's not just going to school, but you're furthering your education to be trained to do what you'd like to do and that will benefit Kentucky. So it's, you know, it'll be up, it'll be running, and we'll be constantly meeting. It won't really slow down at all. It'll ramp up. So it's kind of our internal plan, if that helps.
Amanda, just to give you some feedback, I'm already hearing from counselors. They're super excited about the site and the possibilities that it brings to students. So I'm really looking forward to the launch next week and to the phase 2 as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Yes, and we're working on even lesson planning, and Michelle will run that past you with the IOP alignment too, because that's been a big piece.
Absolutely love it.
Okay. Thank y'all for your feedback on this one. We'll move into the next recommendation or commitment for communications, which was to create a key messaging proposal for grades 9, 10, 11, and 12 to share with high school counselors and incorporate into Infinite Campus and Futurity as a special college-going information tab.
Thing I think we had discussed, and I still think that there's an opportunity for this, at least one message a year. If we can work with Kia for when Keys awards go out, that there's a physical piece where something is like maybe on the back of the letter, because I know it hits a lot of students, and that collaboration could be helpful in addition in terms of that outreach.
Thank you, Christine.
And to add to what Christine said, Christine, maybe if you remember this, or maybe somebody, we did talk about, some of you guys said that you actually have key messaging for each grade level,
Yeah,
like what you said for 9th grade, 10th grade. Isn't that correct? Or did I?
And we're happy to, yeah, we're happy. It's general enough that it hits because students can be on different path timelines. But yes, there are certain key messaging at each level, and we're happy to work with you all on that.
Okay, awesome. I thought I remember that. I knew I wrote it down, but I was like, I don't know if I made that up or thank you.
Okay, I'll just move forward into feedback. We can continue discussion. Anyone has additional thoughts? Like a pretty important strategy. Anyone want to share any of the proposed updates or suggestions to the language of the strategy solution? Okay. All right, well, that will be for the implementation planning team to kind of think through details, et cetera, of that. Okay, so our last solution area was seamless transfer. And I did get some good feedback through the survey that I sent out to the guiding team on this as well. So there are actually going to be 3 commitment statements that were broken out here. So welcome thoughts and feedback on this. The first one, to share intent to transfer information and promote dual enrollment programs between KCTCS colleges and public universities to proactively engage and advise students who intend to transfer to a bachelor's degree program of study.
So I'm going to say again what I said to the smaller group. We don't have that capability yet, but we are happy to work with everybody towards meeting this. So as long as everybody understands that, it's TBD.
And Harmony, can you remind me, is that because you're currently working to revise the KCTCS application?
And that we don't currently have a unified way to identify where our student wants to transfer.
Okay.
And some other nuances, right? Like students hang out in a transfer degree waiting to get into a selected admissions program. So we can't just assume that anybody that's in an AA or AS intends to transfer. So we have some back end work to do on our end before we can realize this.
Thank you.
I think the more reasonable thing to do more immediate, which is what I also shared about before, is to talk about those students who have raised their hands and said, I want to go to X institution, to get them engaged with advisors, maybe lock them into a catalog, share information semester by semester. So, they take the right math course and other things. I know we have pathways, but the more pathways we have, the harder it is to update them, and the harder it is to adjust to changes when, at one institution, they happen the same month, and another institution, it's at the end of the semester. So this is really about the intentionality. So I think the second half is something we can act on a lot sooner, but in terms of, so that's when the student themselves, so there's a difference between a student saying when they fill in our application, hey, I think I want to go to X college, versus they've maybe been enrolled with us 1 or 2 semester, have started those conversations with our transfer centers or transfer advisors. And then we can say to them, hey, now let's connect you. And I think I heard from one of our 4-year friends that they didn't want just smattering of potential at the time of application, right? Because students change their minds.
Yeah, and that also kind of goes along with Sarah's comment as well. Oh, Sarah, did you want to share?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, just for me, working with transfer students in our office, and I'm from the 4-year side, so I've got a different perspective. But to me, it doesn't seem necessary to know immediately where the student wants to transfer to. I think just knowing that there is that intent, that's the biggest takeaway. And then in the advising piece, that's when the advisor at the community college can really kind of dive deeper and then make the connection to the potential 4-year institutions that the student may be looking into. But again, like I said, I'm coming from the 4-year side, so that may be completely different perspective than the 2-year.
Welcome thoughts through the voting here. Okay, looks like we have a pretty almost even split on if this should move forward as a priority or maybe not at this time. Any other discussion around kind of why we think we don't want this to move forward as a priority?
Well, just speaking from WKU only, so we don't really have a formal dual enrollment, let's say with Sky CTC. It's more of a joint admissions where their catalog is locked in. So it's not like they can take courses on both campuses at the same time in an official program. That would be my only change or update on that one.
So I used the wrong word. I should have said joint admissions, and that's more
Well,
broad than dual enrollment. Does joint admissions encompass dual enrollment, or?
well, I mean, it could. I mean, I know, you know, UK's Blue Plus program and EKU has one too, which I think they can take classes in both. So that's just a WKU preference. So I'll go with the Lola group though.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we spent a lot of time on the naming and the like the differences between that some are structured, some are formal agreements, some are more informal. So
This may have already been covered, but I think I want to ask it just so I'm clear. So with the seamless, like if a student went to Sky CTC, you know, would the only colleges be that are available, would it be WKU, or would someone like, would EKU be able to access Sky CTCs? Or is it just geographical location?
So the way it works right now, regardless of the name, since it is different, is that if the student says they commit to go to a particular institution, then we lock them into that dual admission program or whatever we're going to call it, so that those dedicated transfer advisors can have access to those student records and PeopleSoft. They are the point of contact for the student to help them as they continue the rest of their journey at KCTCS, but then also, you know, they don't have to, it's been a minute since I looked at those, and I can look in my summary, but I think in many cases, the application fees are waived because the student has sort of done a soft commitment, if you will, but there's nothing that says that, like, if for whatever reason they change their mind the following semester or before they transfer, that, you know, they've just lost out on advising opportunity to another institution, and they probably would have to pay the application fee then, but it's more around advising than anything else. Then, of course, there are some that have the additional, you can take courses and all of that stuff, but I think at the across the board baseline, that's what we were looking at any institution, so it was student choice.
Okay, thank you.
this is a pretty big chunk that I think, and I'd like to hear from other four-year institutions, as we know there are a couple that exist in different ways. But in putting it in here, I think that this would mean that there would be some similarities that we would all have to agree to, and that would be a pretty big lift to get to something like this at all institutions that we all agree to. Thinking through this. Can you read how it was written again, Lily?
Oh, absolutely. Share intent to transfer information and promote the joint admissions dual enrollment opportunities between KCTCS colleges and public universities to proactively engage and advise students who intend to transfer to a bachelor's degree program of study.
I mean, from where, like, I think that there are multiple things baked into here. So the first step one is the sharing of the information. Right now we get the general information, and I know that there's been discussion about the update when the student says, yes, I plan on transferring, and that we could talk about them being flagged. So I think that's one piece of it. And that needs to be separate because I don't think that has been fully fleshed out, and there are some opportunities to work through that and the MOUs and the timeliness of those things, separate from a dual admission, which I think needs to be its own thing because there's a lot more pieces within that. And if it's fully KCTCS, if it's something where it's just with your like closest partner, And we haven't spent that much time talking about it. I think it came up more recently, and these are examples we like to see this, which I totally agree with. I just don't think that we have spent enough time with that as a group to feel comfortable putting that forward in the way it is right now. And I do think those two, regardless, would need to be broken out into two different priorities.
I think originally I didn't have the promote dual enrollment programs in the original language that we discussed at the guiding team meeting. But it came through feedback on the survey and don't forget the dual enrollment programs as another way to proactively identify students and get them direct advising. And it also was kind of a good, the suggestion was the sooner we can have our university partners advising KCTCS students on their future academic pathways with our institutions, like the more seamless it is for them. But it sounds like our programs are really unique, like different. They don't all just do KCTCS across the board. And so like we might need to figure out like what kind of a communications is this, is this promoting, is we can't just do one email out to all students, it would almost have to be very customized based on your school that you're attending, the college you're attending, and which universities had programs in partnership with that college. I don't know. I'm okay if you guys say that this is a little too complicated right now to move forward with, and we can potentially, as KCTCS continues to work on their tracking of intent to transfer, I'll always come back and move forward at another time. Is that kind of what I'm hearing? Okay. Okay, so this was another one that was incorporated through feedback. And so I've added it in as its own commitment opportunity. That's to develop a communications campaign to raise awareness that students who graduate from KCTCS with an Associate of Arts or Science and a 2.0 GPA are automatically admitted to all Kentucky public universities. I think that this already exists. I don't know if we're doing much to communicate, or I don't know what we're doing to communicate, but this was suggested as like, this would be good to promote even more to raise awareness for that transfer.
Lily, this is Adam from UK. Do you know why it's being limited to AA and AS? I know that we've been in a number of conversations about work readiness, and so we've spent a lot of time in the past several months expanding to the AAS programs.
Mm-hmm. I was assuming that this was kind of a state policy or something. Can somebody help clarify, perhaps? Do we have our KCTCS friends that know really clearly what this automatic admission is?
Jenny was the one who kickstarted this, but my guess is that because those are the intended transfer degrees and that's what the GETA is written around, and it includes gen ed certification, it's the easy thing to talk about. This is across the board. That's not to say that we don't have several and plenty of AAS students who do transfer, but they're not covered under GETA, and we have the challenge of making sure they're gen ed certified. So we can't say the automatic in the same way across the board that we can for these two.
That's helpful. Thanks, Harmony.
Mm-hmm.
Quick question for my your colleagues. I mean, we're at a 2.0, but does anybody else have a higher? And I know that some programs will require higher, but just for general admission, does anybody have higher than the 2.0?
No.
Yeah, my comment was going to be that they're eligible to be admitted to the university, but they're not actually admitted unless they've got an application on file, at least not at our university.
So we could clarify that they will be admitted if they apply. That does seem obvious to me, but yes, I can clarify that, Lisa. Thank you.
I do think that we have to think about that, you know, some universities are looking at cumulative GPA. So if the student had a lower GPA from another school, that could impact an admission decision. But I think that the clarity of language would help a lot, yes.
Okay. Go ahead and see if this communications campaign would be a good idea. And is this clarity for me? Is this something that the KCTCS communications would promote? Just trying to think about who has access to the students, you know, as they're currently enrolled at KCTCS institutions. So this is something completely that KCTCS controls, or are there four-year universities that need to be engaged as well?
I mean, and I'm sure the other 4 years do too, like if a student is declined admission, we include a statement that says you can go to and get, you know, and come to UK, like here are your options if you don't get admitted. And so I think all of us have versions of that. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure we all do. So we would continue that. And I think part of it too is in conversation with some of the maybe BCTC earlier in the year and even KCTCS, I think they're that they can more broadly, you know, publicize that because we've been doing it for a while. Scott or others? Yeah.
I think it's broad. You know, I think it's making sure that everybody has the same talking points. I think it'd be valuable for high school students to know that, you know, if 4 year is not what you're looking at immediate for whatever reason, you want to stay close to home or the affordability factor, but understanding that we are a means for them to get to a 4 year. So I think it's ensuring everybody has the talking points so that people know their options. So that includes communication on futurity, that includes high school counselors being able to articulate this. I think it's incumbent upon all of us.
Thank you, Harmony. Okay, so this looks like something that we want to tweak and refine the language of, but that we think broadly this is an important thing to do. Okay, the last one, everybody. You've been really good sports. Okay, commitment number 3. And this was adopt a statewide reverse transfer agreement where Kentucky universities add language to their transfer applications for student consent to award the associate degree. This one I did refine after feedback through the survey from the original guiding team meeting as well. Any thoughts or questions, suggestions on this one?
I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but I'm going to say the same thing I said in the other meeting. If it's not stated in here, it's okay, but just understand that it has to be done via the National Student Clearinghouse. It's not a one-to-one thing with KCTCS. So since Michelle Nordine, our registrar, is not here, that was one of the things she wanted to make sure that everybody understood. That's what we have in place with UK right now. That's what we have in place with NKU. So it's facilitated through the National Student Clearinghouse.
So we need to clarify that this would only work for institutions that are members of the National Student Clearinghouse. Harmony, is that what you're?
They're not just members, they have to sign the reverse transfer data agreement with the National Student Clearinghouse. So it's,
okay,
you know, it's additional data reporting requirements, and it's on a cycle and more details, but
that is important to clarify for sure.
mm-hmm.
And I just, you know, Stephanie, I'm seeing what you put in the chat here, and that is not really the definition of reverse transfer that we're referring to. That is, I'm sure, one definition of it, but we're referring to a student who comes from a community college prior to completing their associate's degree, enrolls at a bachelor's degree institution, and completes all of the courses that are required for an associate's degree. And the university sends that transcript back to the community college, who then awards the associate's degree to the student, even though they are working toward a bachelor's degree currently.
And I think that's where Stephanie's probably highlighting that that would be confusing to a student if they're seeing that and we're talking about it in different ways as well as counselors.
Yeah.
So on the link that I shared in the chat, there is language around may, right? You may be eligible this, you may be eligible for that. So it is, like Amanda mentioned, a currently launched, but as time goes on, I think we're all also committed to refining that language. If there is something that is applicable to all or not, or some, right, that's clear, because students, I think, and advisors and staff and faculty members, right, will likely continue to ask. And obviously not every website will allocate every provision, but at least knowing how much clarity you can get and what you still need to self kind of advocate for, or what you're not sure about, is a good starting point, hopefully.
Well, I welcome your feedback on that commitment statement, please. Harmony, do you know how many of our public universities are currently, like, have this agreement with National Student Clearinghouse for reverse transfer?
I can only confidently say that we have it with 2, but I think we're in the works with a couple of others.
Yeah, EKU has a system-wide reverse transfer agreement.
All right, so then we're at 3. Apologies, Lisa, I didn't know yours all had gone through.
Thank you. So would anybody like to share, I guess, reasons or thoughts why this is not a priority that would help with seamless transfer? Maybe from an institution that does not currently have this National Student Clearinghouse agreement in place. Does that seem like a really significant barrier or cost? I'm not sure some of the specifics there.
Hi,
I can
it's
say,
Sarah. Oh, thanks, Lisa. I'm sorry. I was going to say, hey, it's Sarah from U of L. I thought we had signed our data agreement with NSC, so I'm going to double check on that. I think this is definitely worth seamless transfer, and we have a reverse transfer in place. So I think just with a little tweaking of language, it's 100% worth it. It's an easy priority to tackle, in my opinion.
Yes, what I would suggest, and I think I put this in my comments, is just to like verify who is in progress, because I don't want us to put something in the Lumina grant that we're already doing. That would, you know what I mean? Like, not all of them are signed, but if the rest of the four years are already in progress, that I would feel uncomfortable with having this as a priority, right, from a grant perspective.
Yeah. Any other thoughts, comments on this one? Okay, and thank you, Harmony, for doing that digging there to find out how many of our public universities are already working toward this.
Sure thing.
Okay, so those were the 10 solution ideas that had been kind of presented through the convening and then discussed in a guiding team, refined a little bit, and now shared out with the network for additional discussion and refinement and feedback. I believe that there may have been 2 that we did not think needed to move forward as solution ideas. But I think that but one of them was the financial aid one. And I think that we talked about changing the language of that to something that, was suggested in the chat, and then continue, like, still having the discussion with the financial aid directors. We don't have to put it in the Lumina grant if we're all already doing it, but I think it would be worth a review to make sure that we do feel confident that we're already there.
You may have mentioned it, but I did wrote out a quick strategy for it and put it in the comments.
Yes, I saw that, Paul. Thank you very much. Institutions will review their financial aid award letter and confirm they meet the NAFSA standards that will provide similar information terminology to students. And that's kind of a good update. So these are kind of next steps as we're moving forward in this process. So I was going to connect with our points of contact for each of our partners here. So each of the public universities, KCTCS, KDE, KIA, and make sure that as far as those 5 strategy areas go, you as our point of contact can identify any of your organizational campus partners that you want to make sure are engaged in various teams. So the idea is that no one person is on multiple teams unless they really want to be, but that hopefully this can be shared across the individuals at your institutions that are most relevant to this work, and that you really want to make sure their feedback is incorporated. There will be, so basically these folks are committing to 2 meetings between mid-February. So we haven't from now till mid-February to solidify these work groups, strategy area groups. Then we'll have 2 meetings between mid-February and mid-April. And the goals of those 2 meetings will be to finalize our language around the solution commitments, and also to develop out an implementation plan. And we'll have a template for doing that. So it'll be consistent and hopefully pretty clear of what the implementation timeline or the next steps look like for that. Then we'll gather all of those up, and we will have a solution team lead that is a CPE person. So thank you very much for those that have volunteered. I'll share their names in a minute. We'll gather all of those implementation plans up, and we'll kind of create this ultimate plan for our project, share it back out with our whole group by the 18th. Just to make sure that everybody sees all of them, not just the one that their work group may have really worked on. And then ultimately, we'll have some opportunities for feedback. We'll probably have one final guiding team meeting that last week of April, or that week in between April 18th and 25th, in order to really feel solid about our plan and our approach, and then we'll submit. Now, one other component of this is that we do have funding from Lumina that we are able to use to support the work of some of these strategies. And so thinking about when we're in our implementation planning meetings, okay, is there going to be a significant cost to achieving this solution? And if so, what do we anticipate that is? And so that will be a factor that we can leverage we have about $80,000 from Lumina to support some of our strategy work. I do want to thank these folks for being our implementation team leads. Transcripts will be Amanda Ellis, dual credit, Robin Abear. I will work with our financial aid folks. Mitzi Holland will work with communications, and Stephanie Chung will work with the transfer solutions. So thanks to everybody for their time there. And then last thing I just wanted to share is that the Student Success Summit is coming up. And so we would love to see you all there. It's February 10th and 11th. It is at UK. Stephanie, I don't know if you could possibly drop the registration link in the chat just in case people don't have it yet. We are at 430 or so folks already registered, so we're really close to capacity. So if you or any of your team members are still interested in attending, please sign up soon. The deadline is this Friday. And last, I do want to mention that we will have Lena Blackstock, who has been doing our student journey mapping project. She will be facilitating a student panel on the February 11th. And so some of our high school Gear Up students will be on stage kind of sharing what they've gotten out of their college admissions journey so far, and their excitement, as well as, opportunities for improvement. And so that'll be a component of the summit. We also have the Community College Research Center sharing out dual credit and equity pathways, a great session on their DEEP project. And then also, I believe on day 2, there's a breakout around dual credit and gateway core success. So I think several components that are really relevant to the work of our admissions redesign project. And so would love to see you all there. Any other final thoughts?
Lily, I'm sorry if I missed this because I was trying to get the answer to the reverse transfer. How do we identify who we want to sit on these teams, the work groups?
Thank you, Harmony. I will send an email out to our guiding team members and there'll be like a shared spreadsheet or something so everybody can identify names and email addresses of folks for each of the strategy areas. And we'll do that in the next 2 weeks would be ideal. That way we can have everything get started to be scheduled, by mid-February. Any other questions? Okay. Well, I will stop recording.